Cool, so hello everyone. This is going to be a talk on why Islam is collapsing, particularly worldwide, but there is going to be an emphasis as well in the UK, because it's obviously more relevant to us here tonight. Now, before I start this talk, I actually want to premise something. I am not in any sense in this talk trying to convey that everything is rosy, that everything is great, and there are no negative issues, there's no things that the church needs to address, there is no areas in which Islam is actually doing well. I'm not saying that at all, because that wouldn't be true. But what I want to convey here tonight with this talk is that there are very good reasons to believe that Islam is fundamentally collapsing as a religion. There are more and more, that's good, yeah. There are more and more people are choosing to turn away from Islam and are choosing alternatives, including which Christianity, our Lord Jesus Christ, which I think is absolutely amazing. So first of all, there is this perception, particularly in the West, that Islam is the fastest growing religion. That this is some sort of miracle, usually, as how it's presented by Muslims to non-Muslims. It's a miracle that this is happening. Look at how Islam is self-evidently true. Why is it true? Because it's growing so fast. Why would Islam be growing so fast if it wasn't true? Why would so many people in the West, in places that were traditionally not Muslim, they were Christian traditionally, why is it that Islam is growing so well in these nations? And they take it as evidence of the validity and the truth of their religion. This is something that I'm sure we've all heard as apologists engaging with Muslims. They constantly love to tell us over and over again, we're winning, you know? So many people are becoming Muslim. Alhamdulillah, this is great. But ladies and gentlemen, I actually want to show you some very good reasons to think that this is misunderstood, that this is also very quickly changing, and will not be the case in, I say, the next few generations. They have, in effect, sold themselves short and spoken too soon. So first of all, I actually want to talk about converts and the problem that Islam has with converts in particular. Islam has a tried and tested method of giving Dawa, of going out, of having their da'is, their spokesmen, who do the equivalent of what we do as evangelists. They go out, they talk about Islam and how great Muhammad was, how he was such a moral leader, he was a feminist, he was a great masculine role model, he was all these things all at once. And it's very convincing to a young generation. They think, wow, maybe I should try this Muhammad, maybe I should go against what my forefathers taught, what my ancestors believed, and try this new approach, because after all, so many people are converting to Islam, there must be something true to it. You know, we have the Andrew Tates of the world and so on, and many people are influenced by that. But there's a big problem. Islam has a great way of giving the Dawa script and convincing people, but it has absolutely no idea as to how to retain those people. Islam has no approach to retaining converts, especially in the West. There is a huge cultural divide between a lot of da'is, a lot of Muslims that have come through immigration, or perhaps their grandparents or their parents came through immigration, and there is still a cultural break between where they came from and the UK or other nations in the West. And that is one of the reasons why it's hard for them to give kind of pastoral support, to get them saying the Shahada, step number one. I suppose step number one might be to even understand who Muhammad is, but then they take the Shahada, and then afterwards, what do they do next? Well, a lot of people just go home and they don't do anything. It's over. That was Islam for them. They learned a little bit about Muhammad. They said the Shahada at some kind of Dawa store, and then they went home, and there was nothing more to be done, because they don't have any models or methods for retaining people once they get them to commit to Islam. All that happens is that there are Dawa guys that take note, and it adds another number to their charts, another number for them to brag about. You know, we got another Muslim today. Just from my own experience, I can tell you that at Speaker's Corner, there are Muslims that will brag every Sunday at Speaker's Corner. And in fact, I will tell you that you will actually hear them this Sunday. You will hear Muslims say, I was at this so-and-so place, or I watched such and such a video, and 20, 30, 50 people came to Islam. Alhamdulillah, isn't it amazing? And they'll say these things. But what they won't tell you is, overwhelming majority of those numbers, if they are legit, because they do like to exaggerate, They won't have a clue about Islam. They won't have the next steps. There's no pastoral support. They won't go to mosque. They'll be basically just left to learn about Islam from where? Well, from YouTube videos, from TikTok videos. That is, in effect, their pastoral support. And it's a massive problem. And there are many different authors that are aware of this issue. In fact, there are Islamic authors who are aware of this issue. So we have Imam Luqman Ahmed. He wrote an article where he says, look, 7 out of every 10 converts leave Islam. It's become somewhat of a massive issue. We're talking about not people who were born Muslim, we're talking about actual converts, people who came to the faith because they met some Muslim da'i, they were convinced by what they said the Shahada, but a few years later, they're nowhere to be seen. It was just a fad for them. Islam has this massive problem with trying to establish connections with people from different cultures, particularly Western nations. It just can't seem to do it in a similar way that Christianity can. It just doesn't have the same skill set. We can look at others as well. So Omar Shahid, he's actually an ex-Muslim, but he actually says over 100,000 people in Britain converted to Islam between 2001 and 2011, but it's believed that up to 75% of them have lost their faith. Again, we're talking about 3/4 of people who became Muslim. Again, they're not born Muslim, they became Muslim, but have just left. Majority of them. Islam has absolutely no way of either keeping its existing numbers or adding to their existing numbers, because over time it just flatlines. People who once join, they learn a little bit about Islam, maybe they even hear us. I hope it is because they hear us. I hope it is because they hear the Christian perspective, the non-Muslim perspective. When we tell them about Islam, they say, hey, you were told Muhammad was a feminist. Are you aware of what Muhammad did? He said some things about women, their intelligence, their religiosity, the fact they're impure because of their period. You know, these are things that Muhammad taught. And I'm hoping that these things have an effect and is one of the contributing reasons as to why so many converts have left Islam. I like to think it is because of what we do. So, there's been a kind of an interesting revelation lately, in the last few years, about how Muslims in particular choose to go about making converts. Because I'm not the first person to notice this. You know, I don't wake up, I haven't just had an epiphany and went, oh, would you look at that? I've come up with this new thing. No, Muslims know this. They know this very well. Some good friends of mine, Jai and DOC, Daughter of Christ, they actually frequently point out that there are Muslim imams who say things like, in America, 24% of Muslim youth actually leave Islam. That's people who are often born into Islam. 24% of them, later on in life, they would have left it. So a quarter are already gone. It's called the avalanche of apostasy. I'm sure many of you have probably heard that phrase before as well. But Dr. William Barrilow, sociologist, research fellow at the University of Warwick, he's a really interesting character. He is a Muslim, he's a sociologist, and he has looked into this in particular, and he's identified some serious issues, namely the fact that Muslims, when they do their Dawa, they don't want to go for average people. They don't want to go for just the average Joe. It's just not going to be conductive for them because they're aware that the apostasy rate of people who join Islam and then a few years later leave is so high, it's actually not really worth it. They don't have the materials anymore to actually address this and to keep them in Islam. So what are they doing instead? Well, they're coming up with hierarchies. They are actually rating people based on whether or not they perceive them as being a great contributor to Islam generally, to the deen. Is this person wealthy? Is this person of the desired racial class? Because that is actually a thing. Is this person someone of whom has a social influence? Do they have a really good TikTok account? How many followers do they have? This is something that they are incredibly interested in, and they go after these at the expense of others. Now, I happen to have seen this, both in my own Case of Speaker's Corner and the Muslims and the Da'is and seeing what they're doing. But it goes more than that because this research actually found that this is something that is prevalent in the Muslim community, but it actually gets worse. There are academics who write about this and encourage this from an Islamic paradigm. So here I've talked about how white English Muslims are often made into mini celebrities. So you can think of Hamza. Hamza from Hamza's Den, he has been idolized largely in part, and again, this isn't me saying this as a Christian, but actual other Muslims have identified this because of his skin color. He is someone of whom is white like me, he is English, but because he became a Muslim, and perhaps because he has his own hijab shop, he has been idolized as someone of whom others can look up to in a way that can help convert other white people to become Muslim. Now, there is a person at Speaker's Corner, again this is my own experience, but I think it's relevant because I found this in the field talking to people, and it really illustrates this. There is someone at Speaker's Corner, also called Hamza, but he's not white Hamza, he's black Hamza. And black Hamza has a very different opinion on this, and he is a Muslim, and he does not like me. Me and Hamza do not get on very well, because we oppose each other, and he won't talk to me now, because it's got pretty bad for him. But anyway, what I found is if you go onto his YouTube channel, he actually talks about his own experiences as a black Muslim and how he constantly has to deal with racial prejudice coming particularly from Arabs, and how when he meets Arabs there's this kind of like racial supremacy and the fact that he gets treated worse, and if I remember correctly I think he is also a convert to Islam because of his skin color, which is insane. You've got two Hamzas. It's the story of the two Hamzas here. One black, one white. The one who is white gets tons of praise, tons of influence, and also tons of money from his very successful recent GoFundMe, but that's a separate thing. But the other Hamza doesn't get any of this. In fact, he actually faces tons of prejudice because he's a different skin color. He's just not valued as much. So about that Muslim look itself, we have by the Mahdi Locke. He actually published a book called The Big Step, How to Survive Islam in the Anglosphere. And he actually mentions this very idea that Muslim da'is should be not just going and making anyone into converts, but targeting specific people. Muslims should go out, find the wealthy, find from the preferred racial class, find from the social influencers, the Ali Dawas, the Muhammad hijabs, find those kind of people and make them Muslim. Let's think of it this way. For the last few years, anyone else noticed, Jordan Peterson? All of a sudden, you had Muhammad hijab trying to reach out to him to get him in on interviews. There's a reason they do that. They go for the big celebrities because they're part of the somewhat privileged class. They have influence. They can help others reach Islam simply by merely talking about it in a non-negative way. It doesn't even need to be a positive way. It just needs to have these influential people talking about Islam. And that's sufficient from their point of view. Now, there's another point I wanted to mention. So we talked here about converts and the fact that many people who convert to Islam actually leave Islam very soon after making their Shahada. But there's another point. Currently in the world, we've often had this perspective that population just keeps growing up. More and more people in the world, and it's just always going to be this way, it's going to keep going up, there's going to be an actual problem of too many people in the world. But as I think we're starting to recognize now, that's not actually true, and the data bears this out very conclusively. It turns out that actually most people across the world, and I'm not just talking about the West, I'm talking about the entire world, have gone from on average having around 6 children, in terms of fertility rate for the average woman, to now being 3 or less than 3. And this has happened in the West over a fairly long period of time, but in other places, the Middle East, Asia for example, it's happened very suddenly, in just a few decades. Countries that have long been associated with high levels of fertility rates are no longer associated with that because it's just not true. Places like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia. These countries have plummeted just like the West has in our fertility rate. But we don't really think about it and we don't talk about it. Now I also want to say, I owe a lot of this research to Mel from Islamic Origins. It's his argument that I'm kind of presenting here, and he's done some amazing videos on that on his YouTube channel, Islamic Origins, so do check that out. But let's look at the actual data. So how long did it take for fertility to fall from more than 6 children per woman to fewer than 3 children per woman? Now in the United Kingdom, here, that has happened. The fertility rate is less than 3. It's quite a bit less than 3 actually. It took about 95 years for that to reach this point. And you see other countries as well, Poland, USA, Greece, Malaysia. But there's some interesting countries here. So we have Iran, we have Bangladesh, we have Malaysia, we have some other interesting nations of which you wouldn't perhaps think have low fertility rates, but they actually do, and they've done it in much shorter periods of time than we have. So, let's look at the first case. We have Indonesia. Indonesia, and usually these graphs, by the way, are presented over the course of the 1960s to today. So you're looking at roughly a 60-year period. They went from 5.5 average children, so the fertility rate is 5.5, the average woman, to now it's 2.1. Which is roughly replacement rate. Replacement rate, generally experts say, is around 2.1. You need to have 2.1 children in order to continue the level of population at its existing level. Let's look at Bangladesh. Bangladesh used to have almost 7, an average of 7 children per woman back in the 1960s. Today it's 2.2. Again, just above replacement levels. These are substantial numbers. And as you can see, it's relatively recent. We're not going to see the knock-on effect from this for a few decades. It takes time. But why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this because I want you to understand that things like immigration are not always going to be the same level they are today. There's a lot of people that think, well, immigration is high in the UK and in the West in general, from predominantly Muslim nations, and this is very effective for their Dawa. Right? Predominantly Muslims come into Western nations, they then spread Dawa, but that's not really the main thing. The main thing is just the fact that they settle down, have families, and have kids. And those kids have kids, and they have a lot of kids. And that's how they influence nations. The Western population, the UK population of Muslims has gone up every year. Every 10 years, look at the census data, and it'll tell you that the level of Muslims in the UK just keeps going up. The percentages, I think it's like somewhere between 3 and 5%. As an estimate today. But that's not always going to be the case because immigration, the rates at which they are today, and yes, they're very high today, they're just not going to be maintained. And they can't be maintained because the nations from which Muslims are coming from, they are having their own problems too. We just simply haven't seen the effect of them yet. This is something that is going to happen over decades, but in over decades, what's going to happen? Well, you're not going to get that same number of Islamic immigration to the UK or to the West. It's going to change. We also have Pakistan. Pakistan's doing slightly better, 3.6, but has gone down again from around 7, which is a crazy drop in a very short period of time of 60 years. We can look at Iran. Iran is 1.7. Iran actually can't sustain itself. That's really interesting. They actually don't reach 2.1. And just for reference, by the way, the UK is under 2.1 at the moment. So we can't sustain ourselves either. We are actually declining as a population. But we're not unique. And it's not just the West, it's not just Europe. It's everywhere across the world. Even African nations are not safe from this. Africa is perceived as the bastion of places where there are high birth rates. Traditionally, that's been the case. But even Nigeria, their population rate, their fertility rate has dropped as well. Afghanistan is actually, at the moment at least, doing quite well, given that it's 4.8, but given that line over the last few decades, I don't think it's going to look positive for the next few decades, do you? Again, we've gone around, actually theirs was even higher 60 years ago, closer to 7.5, average of 7.5 children per woman in Afghanistan. And now it's plummeted to 4.8. So that's why I think the population decline, in the sense that it's not growing at the same rate, the fertility rates have plummeted in Muslim nations, is important, because it will have a knock-on effect. Now, the next point I want to talk about is liberal influence. Islam, in some ways, can kind of hold back the tide of liberal influence, in some ways, but in other ways, it absolutely cannot, and it has capsized, it has given in to many liberal influences. So one example is the fact that there is a problem in the Muslim communities, and again, this isn't me saying this is them saying this, that they have with free mixing. Muslim men and women are not meant to just hang out together. It's not meant to happen. But it's increasingly becoming popular, both not just in the West, but whole of the world. It's becoming, they are being influenced more and more by these liberal ideas, and they're really struggling with it. I don't really have any answers to it. Now, there is a YouTuber named Brother Hajj, who I'm aware of, and he's aware of me, because we often end up talking about the same things. I've been calling out, I guess you would say, potentially fraudulent charity, let's call it that, with Muslim da'is who have been raising money in less than official ways, and it's a little bit suspicious. And he's a Muslim, Brother Hajj, who actually is interested in the same thing. He wants to call this out. He actually makes videos where he's like, this Muslim over here, he's obviously just taking people for a ride. And one of the things he talks about is the fact that Islamic charity is not being practiced properly under the Sharia, how it should be. What's actually happening is that they are adopting Western models of charity. What do I mean by that? Well, the same way that we have charities that are worth millions, if not billions, and we have CEOs that have salaries, and they're quite substantial salaries. They are more like traditional businesses in their structure, not trying to, this isn't a form of criticism from me, but rather just acknowledging how modern charities work in the West. They're adopting this model. And they're adopting the model because it's sustainable and because it does actually pay people's salaries in the end. Whereas what they would like to do is go back to an Islamic one that doesn't have the same accusations of usury, of interest, of inappropriate association with funds being used for other things. They would like to get back to that, but they're struggling to because, again, the influence of the West is just very, very, very strong. And it does influence Muslims and their communities. The next one is halal. Now, halal is interesting. Halal is really interesting because halal is, you can sum up halal industry as just a regulator. That is all halal is. It's just a series of regulations that are imposed by Muslims for the purpose of ensuring that their meat, their production of meat, is done in an Islamically acceptable way, which is fine, as long as they're being able to achieve it in the way that they think they are. But as people, like for example, Shamsi at Speaker's Corner, who's a very notable speaker who goes to Speaker's Corner to preach to non-Muslims, he has noticed many, many times, and he talks about it a lot. He says, look, halal industry is terrible. They don't practice it properly. There are instances of halal certifiers that have no issue with non-Muslims being involved in the creation of halal meat. So just to give you an overview, when you want to make something halal, you have to say the Bismillah, and you have to have it done by a Muslim, and you have to kill the animal in a particular way, usually the slicing the neck. That's very problematic if you have halal certifiers who are not Muslim doing this. Well, if they're not Muslim, who are they? Well, there are cases of Christians being employed, or Jewish people being employed, or atheists being employed. And the reason why is because a lot of the certifiers aren't actually Muslim. They're just groups that act on behalf of an Islamic halal perspective. They help Muslims achieve this, but they themselves probably don't have that much skin in the game. There are others as well. So for example, Muslims don't want there to be an automated chain of halal meat. They don't want machines killing animals, because if machines are doing it, it kind of takes away from how it's meant to be done, which is by hand and by a Muslim in particular. Whereas if a machine is doing it, is it still a Muslim doing it? It's kind of a grey area. But many of the halal certifiers have fallen prey to liberal standards. And what are liberal standards? I mean, they're not particularly great in themselves, but many liberals will not be that interested in ensuring that every time a cow, for example, is killed, the Bismillah is said. Why would they? They're not particularly intrigued by it. They themselves think, well, you know, we'll just let this guy do it. We'll leave him to it, leave him in a room, and just assume he's doing it. And then they'll do a regulatory checkup. They'll go and check to make sure every few months or so, which is good enough for them. But for Muslims, it's not good enough. That's not actually how it's meant to be done. Halal is meant to be a lot more strict than this, and they're meant to be a lot more compliant rather than taking more lax approaches. And Islam itself is not it's not immune to the thoughts of the day. The Manosphere being quite a big one. There have been influences from people like Andrew Tate, who have kind of become a Muslim spokesperson, even though they don't really know anything about Islam. Andrew Tate knows next to nothing about Islam. He just embraced it. He even made the sign of the cross, I think, and he even celebrated Easter, not realizing you're not supposed to do that as a Muslim. But nonetheless, he is perceived in the Muslim world as a great example of a Muslim. Why? Because he's part of the Manosphere. And why is that intriguing? It's because he's an example to men, particularly young men, of what it means to be successful, of what it means to be expressive, and what it means to live a good life. But he's not actually a Muslim, really. He doesn't act like one. But they're kind of stuck with him now, so some of the leading influences are not quite Muslim, at least as how they would hope them to be. And there are some other guys as well, as I'm sure you're all aware. Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawa, and of course Andrew Tate. They're not great. They're not the best, and they don't represent Islam, not particularly well. Muhammad Hijab recently in controversy for a woman coming forward and making allegations that she is his secret second wife in a misyar marriage, to which she has felt incredibly dishonored. Her words, he is using her as a sexual relationship, let's put it that way, to be candid. But that's one of the spokespeople for Islam today. You see, it never used to be like this. I want to illustrate that as well. I'm not talking about something that has always been the case. I'm talking about something that has changed. You used to have the Zakir Nights, the Ahmadiyya, people who were actually trained in giving logic, giving speeches, who would go out and actually give a passionate, informed, but also well-represented form of Islam. You wouldn't see Ahmadiyya doing the stuff that Muhammad Hijab does. Would you see Ahmadiyya eating some grapes like that during a debate? You think that? No, of course you wouldn't. You wouldn't see that at all, because that is not what Islam used to be. It's not how it was represented. But that's changed now. And it's changed because of the modern era that we live in today. Another point is that we have seen crazy high levels of criticism of Islam. That just wasn't present. It wasn't present before. Before you had language barriers. Before you had the fact that there wasn't the technology to do it. If you wanted to critique Islam, you either had to make some kind of like presentation, I guess like this, put it on a DVD, and hope it would sell somewhere and someone would watch it. Which is how they used to do this kind of stuff. Or, if you're Sam Shamoon, you would write an article on your website and it's just a big wall of text and hope that people come across the website and read it. And that was kind of the best that you could hope for, because the technology wasn't there to really take it any further. But now we actually have totally new ways of critiquing Islam and having Muslims be aware of this. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have a very high opinion of what we do at this place, at the NAPC, polemics. I think that what we do is incredibly effective. I think we reach Muslims, and I think you'll see that at Sunday. I think you'll see that when you have conversations, if you go to Speaker's Corner on Sunday, you'll realize that Muslims don't have answers to a lot of the things that you're going to bring up. Polemics has really changed the landscape. Criticism of Islam has changed the landscape. They're having to deal with it in ways they never had to deal with it before. It used to be that, Zakir, Naik, Ahmadiyya, they'd take the Bible out of context, they'd do something. They'd hide behind the Arabic. But this is getting less and less feasible in the era of modern technology and modern criticism. We have Jay Smith, we have one of the greats, we have David Wood, Sam Shamoon, all these people that are now critiquing Islam publicly and in a way that is accessible to all, and it is absolutely amazing. Another point I want to talk about is kind of related to this. Islam has entered into an intellectual fatigue. It has just given up. It doesn't quite know what to do. Now, I took this image, and this happened just a few days ago. Right before I came to this conference, I saw this image, and I thought it beautifully summed up intellectual fatigue. In this image, you have Ali Dawa, and you have Avery, God Logic, who was here with us the last few days at the conference. God Logic went to Ali Dawa to debate him on pretty much anything, I'm guessing at this point, But Avery just wanted to go confront him to demonstrate to people the truth of his religion, of the true religion, Christianity, and the falsehood of Islam. And Ali Dawa, do you know what he did? He couldn't even engage. He ended up going on a rant about trying to sell prayer mats or something. He's actually looking at the camera in this image, trying to sell the person watching prayer mats. While Ali Dawa is there saying, hey, did you know that Muhammad did X, Y, Z? Do you know that the Islamic dilemma is true? And Ali Dawa's not even addressing him. It's an embarrassing state. And this is not just like a one-off thing. This is the intellectual sphere today. It is abandoned. It is completely abandoned. There is nowhere left for anyone to go. The people who actually try to engage in an intellectual debate are people who are not really Sunni Muslims or on the verge of leaving Sunni Islam. Because that's the only way you can debate. How do you deal with the Islamic dilemma? Well, what if you took this crazy innovator position that none of the early scholars held that pretty much makes you leave Sunni Islam? Well, some people are thinking about it. That shows you just how bad this is. And you can actually watch Muslims who will just condemn each other, make takfir on each other. They'll say, you're not a Muslim anymore. You've left the faith. Why? Because you've innovated. You've come up with bid'ah. You've gone beyond the acceptable things that the Shahada taught, the companions taught of Muhammad, and you've come up with your own stuff. So to even engage in an intellectual sphere basically means you somewhat have to leave Islam according to many of the Muslims who are orthodox. It is a crazy world we live in at the moment where Muslims don't have the ability to engage anymore. And again, those who are going to Speaker's Corner on Sunday, you're going to experience that firsthand. You're going to experience the fact that Muslims will run from any person who is part of the Christian debate team. If I'm there, they won't talk with me. If Bob, the Speaker's Corner, is there, they won't talk with him. David from Speaker's Corner, they won't talk with him. Ishmael from Speaker's Corner, they won't talk with him. Paperboy from Speaker's Corner, they won't talk with him. Young Bob from Speaker's Corner, they won't talk with him. We could just keep going on. And I'm not doing this to brag or anything. I'm doing this because I want you to understand. They don't have anything left. They're just looking for people who are vulnerable, people who are tourists, people who are very young in their faith, who don't yet have a developed understanding of their faith. Or perhaps yet they don't even understand much about Islam, because it leaves them vulnerable to people like Mansour, Hashim, the other debate team at Speaker's Corner, for them to come in and say, well, let me tell you about how great Muhammad was. How do you guys believe in one God when you believe in the Trinity? Isn't the Trinity three gods? They'll say things like this, and they're just hoping you aren't well informed enough to be able to deal with it. So, how do they actually deal with this? At least, what is one strategy they employ to deal with this? One is do not engage. So, Speaker's Corner, part of our tradition in this country, at least in London, for a long time, many hundreds of years, we're seeing less and less people turn up there for the purpose of debate. Not with any other Christian team. Not a sincere debate. Not anymore. They're now leaving, and they're going to places like Stratford, Leicester Square, Shepherd's Bush. They're going to places like this because it is easier for them to engage with the public, people who don't know about Islam. The people who may not even be Christian, they may be completely secular, agnostic. But those people they can convince, hey, Muhammad was a feminist, Muhammad was XYZ, whatever it might be. And that's how they're trying to do Dawa now. Because they can't actually do it on a one-on-one basis in a place of public debate. And that's this. This is someone who is at Stratford. I haven't had the pleasure of talking to him yet, but I'm hoping one day I will, if he will actually speak to me. But I have a funny feeling he knows who I am, so he probably won't, especially if he sees this video. But Dawa is no longer about inviting people to Islam as such. Now this goes back to a big problem. Dawa isn't about just converts anymore. Not anymore. It used to be. It used to be about trying to get people to sincerely embrace Islam. Why? Because if you can make someone embrace Islam and they go on to do great things and you inherit their rewards, in Jannah, the kind of sort of pyramid scheme of you inherit what they do kind of thing. But now there's a different motive, financial motive. Dawa has become a business. In fact, it's not actually a business, it's an entire industry. Dawa, with the combination of social media, which are like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever else the youngsters are using these days, they're realizing that they can make money from this and they can earn one of the things that many people want, which is social influence. Ali Dawas, Muhammad Ijabs, they have millions of subscribers and they make money from what they do. So if they make money from what they do, why do they even need to keep on defending Islam or even really care as such about whether people genuinely become Muslims? They don't. There is no reason for them to care about that. That's an old way of thinking. Muhammad Ijab, in all honesty, probably really doesn't care that much. Ali Dawa has gone on record for saying that he's happy when people become Christians. And when he explained, like, what do you mean by that? He said, because when they become Christian, they're at least a little bit more like Muslims than when they were before. Imagine us saying that. Imagine us saying, I really like it when like secular people become Muslim because they're a bit more like Christians. Like, what are you talking about? We're nothing alike. But they see it that way because, again, for him, he's embracing the Manosphere. He's, best buds with Andrew Tate. So he sees it as just like a step in the right direction. It's a very naive way of thinking, and it's not even an Islamic way of thinking. But again, he's not in it for Dawa. I think this is much more about the fact that this is a profit-making business. By the fact that he sells prayer mats, he doesn't make any secret of this. This is something he does. He chooses to make money from what he does in a very promotional way. Every video he makes has adverts in it, just to give an example. So in this image, you can see what's going on here, and what you need to think about is in this image, there's a camera there, right, which is obviously what's taking this picture. There are cameras pretty much at every Dawa store now. Why are there cameras at every Dawa store? It's because they want to do content creation, and they want to put it on their YouTube channels. If again, think about this, every time a completely unexpected member of the public goes up to a Dawa store, and this guy, I forget his name, but he runs them through the Dawa speech. Yusuf, right, cool. So Yusuf here, with his glorious beard, he gives a great Dawa talk to this young lady. And this young lady is convinced. And she's told that she just needs to repeat some words in Arabic, and then she'll become a Muslim. And her life will be better and things will be great. Well, they take the video of this, because they'll be recording, and they usually don't make it very well known they're recording, and if they can, they won't mention it. And they then go home and they upload it to their YouTube channels to get lots and lots of views, because lots of Muslims like to see that they're doing well. A lot of what Islam is its perception. A lot of it is perception. They want people to think they're doing well, but in reality they're doing very poorly. They just don't show you that stuff. They don't show you the videos where God Logic went up to their Dawa stall and absolutely admonished them. And if they do, it's heavily edited, and the thumbnail is clickbait, and the title is misleading, and they do everything they can to try to get away from it. And that's if they have to. Most of the time they just won't upload anything. So the purpose of Dawa has changed. It's no longer a sincere effort. It is just about social media presence and largely making money. Now, there's another big problem. Many of you know that image. So, what do you do when you have a new protected class? A class that was not there before. Remember, Muslims will tell you, I don't know if they still do, I haven't heard it as much, they're a little bit lax now, but they used to say, there are no ex-Muslims. There are no ex-Muslims. No one has ever left Islam. Islam is so beautiful, it's the best deen, everyone follows it, they love it, they don't leave it. That's not true, and we know it's not true. There is now a council of ex-Muslims in Britain. There's actually a council for that now, a group of people formed precisely to help nurture people of whom have left Islam and need some sort of support in order to help them deal with the issues they're facing, whether that's from their parents, whether that's from the culture, the society they live in. Whatever it might be, it's sufficient enough that there's an actual council for them. But if there's enough ex-Muslims in the West today, then it leads to another problem. What do you do when people find out that technically, according to the Sharia, if someone leaves Islam, you are meant to execute them? What do you do? Are you just going to go around in Western nations being like, yeah, that's what you do? Are you going to lie to them? Are you going to say, no, that's not really there? For a long time, it was just to lie and deceive and to say this isn't a thing. And then they dumb it down by saying, look, there's very few people who actually leave Islam anyway, if any. But they can't say that anymore because they're too vocal. There's Ishmael at Speaker's Corner, a vocal ex-Muslim. There are ex-Muslims at Speaker's Corner who go around and they openly say, look, I'm an ex-Muslim. And here I am opposing you. Many of them are Christians now. And they say, there's a video of Ishmael actually, where he goes to Ali Dawa and he asks Ali Dawa, what should happen to me? Because he knows full well what the answer ought to be. Ishmael, my friend at Speaker's Corner, who's an ex-Muslim, Christian, should be executed, according to Islam. And Ali Dawa knows that. And do you know what Ali Dawa said to Ishmael? He said, yes, you're going to be executed. You're going to be executed. And I don't know if he said, and I'm proud of that, like he did when he made his video, in response to apostate prophet, who is also an ex-Muslim, who, thanks be to God, I think is getting baptized either today or some point around today, which is really, really good to hear. Yeah, hallelujah. But yeah, that's what they're doing now. And it has a real effect. We now have big, substantial, millions of subscribers, Muslim Dawa guys, telling the public, yes, we are going to execute ex-Muslims, and we're proud of that. That has an effect on how Islam is perceived in the general public. That's not palatable to the West in any sense. And there's going to be long-lasting implications of this. And they can't go back because they've already admitted it. They've already said, yes, this is the Sharia. And too many, in fact, it's worse than that. It's not just that they have scholars saying it. It's not just that they have Ali Dawa and his friends saying it. It's that the average Muslim who goes on TikTok, maybe they're only like 18 years old, they're saying it in large numbers. There's going to be knock-on effects for this, and these are going to be seen long into the future. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about geography. So, there's a misperception that Islam is spreading, and it's spreading uniformly. It's just going around everywhere. Everywhere is susceptible to Islam. That simply isn't the case. And why is it not the case? It's not the case because in the UK, in the West, Islam is largely propagated by immigration. It comes in from other nations, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from Iran, from all these places. That's how Islam spreads in Western nations. And you can look at this graph. So what do you notice? Well, you can see London. London is a heavy area. The more darker blue, the more heavily, more of a population of Muslims that are in that area. So of course, big capital city, large immigration there. So lots of blue there, lots of Muslims there. You can see Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, big major cities in the UK, in England. But what about somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Wales? There's no Islam there at all. I would even question whether there's even a mosque there for miles and miles and miles. There simply isn't. There isn't any Islamic presence there at all. If you look at England in its entirety, you'll realize that actually the Islamic spread is just focused on very particular areas. And they struggle to get out. These areas, by the way, have 40, 50, 60% levels of Christian belief. That's roughly what we're looking at here. The rest is largely like atheism and Gnosticism, spiritualism, and other groups. But how is it that in the middle of the nowhere, they became Christian in small villages, in small towns, in the north, in the south, in Wales? They became Christian, but none of them are becoming Muslim. There's no spread there. There's no urgent desire to become Muslim in any of these places. And it's, again, because Dawa doesn't fundamentally work. Dawa struggles to make headroads. It simply cannot make the converts that it wants to make. Again, Dawa is not the primary vehicle of the spread of Islam. It is immigration. And immigration, ladies and gentlemen, will not continue forever at the rate that it is. It will go down. And when it does, that's basically game over. They haven't been able to demonstrate they can convert people. Or they can convince people, like on a very small level, they can convince some people to which they then revert a few years later. So that doesn't work, and that's like 75% of them. Interestingly, one of the articles I brought up earlier actually points out that out of all the converts to Islam, 75% are women. And I wondered why. And then I thought, it's because of the distinction that Islam has. A Muslim man can marry a Christian woman, but not the other way around. So how many Christian women are there who meet a really, good-looking, successful man, but he's a Muslim? And they think to themselves, well, maybe I can make that work. Maybe that won't be so bad. Maybe when we have kids, we'll find a way of going through it. But in practice, it often doesn't. And why doesn't it? It's because, well, a lot of these relationships break down. There are stories of women who were Christian, who became Muslim because of a man, and then the relationship broke down, and then they went straight back because they had no reason to stay. Their family wasn't Muslim. They didn't come from a Muslim background, and the man that they converted for is now she's not with them anymore. So go straight back to what they were before. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I have collected a list of sources in this presentation for you all to have a look at. Now, these are all hyperlinks, so you can basically just click on these and it'll take you to everything that I looked at. The world map data is there, the articles by the ex-Muslim, by the Imam who says that Islam is shrinking because of apostasy. It's all there for you to grab for yourselves. And you can grab this presentation. So if you want to get your phones out and just scan the QR code if you can see it, you'll be able to get it for yourselves. Nice. And yeah, where to find me? Now, I made this mistake in my last presentation. I've done it again. So I'm Chris at Speaker's Corner, for anyone who doesn't know. You can find me on YouTube. You can see my content there. I talk about a lot of things, a lot of it to do with polemics towards Islam, a lot of it to do with contemporary issues in the UK that affect the UK in particular. And you can find my content here. And finally, thank you very much. And do you have any questions?
Hello. Right here. So when I was walking around London, I noticed there was a lot of people that looked Middle Eastern. They're dressed very secular. Is there any statistics on the number of people that immigrate to the UK and then deconvert from Islam? Because in the US, we have a lot of it. There's a ministry I know called the Tucson Refugee Ministry, and Muslims come into Tucson, they have no community, and they even pretty much deconvert. They become Christian or secular. Is there any numbers on that in the UK?
The statistics I looked at were primarily focused on America, but I would imagine they're very, very similar. Although the UK has a more intense amount of immigration from people from Muslim backgrounds, and they do tend to form communities. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go to East London. If you do and you walk around, you will see these communities for yourself. And yeah, they're very, very interesting. A lot of them are still influenced by liberal values, because it's still unavoidable, but they are still managing to maintain their Islamic faith. But I have a strong suspicion it's very similar from what we see in America. So large amounts of apostasy.
Thank you for your presentation, Chris. Quick question. I was really surprised at your figure that you gave us, 75% of converts to Islam, leaving Islam in a few years.
Yep.
Fantastic figure, by the way. But in terms of, that tells me that there are hundreds of thousands of people who are looking for something in life.
Yep.
So missionally, why have they chosen Islam over Christianity? And if they've done so, what are the effective means by which Christians should be reaching out to those who are ex-Muslim in that respect, and kind of drawing them and bringing them home, in the phrase of a certain well-known Mr. Smith?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. So I think one of the big attractions to Islam from the Western perspective at the moment is the fact that it has figured out how to brand itself. Islam is now a brand in a way, because I mean, I say it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but also I really do mean that to the youth now, they go on TikTok and they see Andrew Tate doing some prayers, you know, he's doing salah, and they think, oh wow, this is really great, this is like a strong masculine representation. And guess what? It's an answer to LGBTQ, it's an answer to the liberal ideas that many people are disenfranchised with. I mean, I'm disenfranchised with it, but I mean, I've been looking at it and studying it, but most people who are young, they're growing up now, and they're looking at their parents, they're looking at how they've managed to do in a liberal world, has it benefited them, what issues are they experiencing, and they're looking for something new to offer them answers to the problems they perceive. And they think Christianity, if they even think Christianity, one of the problems is that we don't even, Christianity is often an assumed thing that just, it's kind of like lurking beneath. It's like a sleeping giant. Christianity needs to wake up. The giant needs to wake up. But at the moment, it's still sleeping. And because of that, people are looking at the loudmouth Andrew Tates, the influencers, and they're seeing, oh, there's something to do with Islam. Islam is great, it's strong. It best represents what I'm looking for in my worldview as a man, as a young man. And it predominantly affects young men. If you look at how Andrew Tate, Ali Dawa, Mohammed Hijab, who they're influencing, it is largely young men. What Christians can do is just to demonstrate, quite publicly, what it means to be a Christian. Now, Bob has said something in an earlier talk that I want to echo, because I fully believe this. As Christians, we have signs and symbols that we can use. A lot of us don't, depending on our traditions. But there is value in fasting in a way that people see. There is value in wearing something that people can see. There is value in actually acting out your faith in a way that is perceived. And I'm not saying do this to be seen, do this to be, to be envied. I'm not saying anything like that. All I'm saying is that let us show people actual Christianity in a form they can see and understand, instead of it just being something that just it's hidden. It's just something that society kind of used to do, but now we just have the leftovers of it. No, it's alive and well. Let's show people it's alive and well. That's my answer to that.
Hi, Chris. What do you anticipate is going to be the reflection of the next census that we have? Do you think that because of the immigration, Islam will be higher in the UK, or
that's a very good question. So the difference between the 2021 census data and the 2011 census data, and then before that the 2001 census data, is the actual rate of Muslims through immigration, predominantly, into this nation, it went up from 2001 to 2011, but from 2011 to 2021, it maintained. So I'm thinking that in a few more decades, through the census data, you'll actually start to see it decline. That's my prediction. And I think it's bared out in the data. It's because there are less and less Muslims in the world to emigrate, fundamentally. But we'll see. That's my prediction, and we'll see if that actually happens.
Well, what I mean is comparing the immigration to the apostasy rates.
How do you mean, sorry? Like how?
So you've got people coming into the country, obviously at the moment at very high numbers.
Yeah.
But we're also talking about you got the 24% of young Muslims leaving. So in terms of our country being maintained as a Muslim minority, is that going to now start shrinking again, or is the immigration going to keep it at a level or raise it up even higher?
So the immigration will decline over the next few decades, and the apostasy rate will either continue as it is or increase. Okay. Absolutely, yeah. Again, because the trends they are moving into areas that are not sustainable. Dawa is more about money than it is about actual meaningful connection. They can't demonstrate they have a way of retaining people once they become Muslim. They lose them within 5 years or so. Again, 75% of converts leave, which is just not something you can sustain as a religion. So yeah, it's going to decline. That's what the data is telling me, and yeah, I'm willing to bet that's the case.
Hi, Chris. It's not a question, just an observation to complement what you said. Because when you observe from outside, you or Bob or David Wood or any of our Christian apologists doesn't fear to take on any knowledgeable Muslims. But
Yep.
any of the Dawa guys, they don't want to do that. And the world famous #1 Muslim debater, Zakir Naik, never debated anyone.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah, true.
most Muslims don't know about it. He only debated one historian. He was never a debater and never debated anyone, but still holding the position as the best debater in the Islamic world.
Yeah.
That's all.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm aware that Zakir Naik had some interesting methods about who he chose who to debate, and was very selective. I guess just from this, it's also just about how they go about doing things, right? Like Zakir Naik is a lot more presentable than Muhammad Hijab, just generally. In fact, actually, funny story. Hamza from Hamza's Den actually met Zakir Naik, and Zakir Naik did not like him. He thought he was arrogant. You know, I find that kind of interesting, right? It kind of shows the perspective from the old generation and how they used to do Dawa to the new generation. The new generation is very, very different. But yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, it's quite curious actually. A Muslim friend of mine who you have had some interaction with, known as Al-Yemeni, makes a lot of the same observations that you're commenting on. And I'm wondering if, given the comments about birth rates and so forth, and the young age of the average Muslim, 27 it was mentioned before, do you think that we will see a more mature presentation of Islam as the average age of Muslims increases, such that we don't have the entertainment of the Muhammad Hijabs and Ali Dawas and Andrew Tates of the world, because it's less targeted towards young teenagers who
I
don't
think
have
it would
so
have
much
to be.
discretion.
Yeah, I think it would kind of have to be eventually, because you can't have loose cannons like Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa doing very morally questionable things and also presenting Islam in not the best state forever. You know, ultimately generations pass on, and the current generation, Gen Z, Generation Alpha, whatever it's called, they're going to be like, hey, you know, we're in our 20s and 30s now, we're having kids, and we're telling our kids, yeah, don't trust these Dawa guys. You know, we went through a phase where we thought, you know, wouldn't it be cool to be Muslim and be part of the Manosphere? But actually, it really wasn't what we thought it was. Turns out it was really immature, and it turns out there's a lot of bad things in Islam that people learned over time. So yeah, I think you're right. I think they'll have to return to like a more mature, Zakir Naik, Ahmadiyya way of doing things, I guess. So yeah. Cool. Is that all we're time for? Yep. Cool. Awesome. Thanks a lot. God bless.